welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the spine-chilling world of horror with the top 10 scary stories that will keep you up all night. So grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and let's get started. Let's get into it. The Johnson family thought they had found their dream home. They had been searching for months, and when they stumbled upon this charming property, they felt an instant connection. The house was everything they had ever wanted. A spacious yard, beautiful architecture, and a quiet neighborhood. A quaint Victorian house on the outskirts of town, it seemed perfect. The neighbors were friendly, and the area had a rich history that fascinated them. They couldn't believe their luck in finding such a gem. But from the moment they moved in, strange things began to happen. It started with small, almost unnoticeable events. Lights flickering, cold drafts in certain rooms, and the feeling of being watched. At first it was just small things, doors creaking open on their own, footsteps echoing down empty hallways. The family tried to brush it off as the house settling or their imaginations running wild. Then one night, they heard a whispering voice. It was faint but unmistakable, a soft murmur that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The voice seemed to come from the walls, pleading for help. It was as if the house itself was alive, harboring secrets and sorrows from a time long past. Desperate for answers, the Johnsons contacted a local historian who revealed a dark secret. The historian spoke of a tragic past that had left a permanent mark on the house. The house had once belonged to a woman named Eliza, who had tragically lost her children in a fire. The grief and despair had consumed her, and it was said that her spirit never left the house. The Johnsons decided they couldn't stay any longer. The once dream home had turned into a nightmare, and they knew they had to leave for their own peace of mind. They moved out, leaving the haunted house behind. The house now stands empty, a silent witness to the tragedies and mysteries that continue to haunt its walls. Emma had always been fascinated by antique shops. She loved the history and mystery that each item held, imagining the stories behind them. Every weekend she would visit different shops, hoping to find something unique and special. One day, she stumbled upon an old ornate mirror that she couldn't resist buying. The mirror had an intricate frame with delicate carvings, and its glass seemed to hold a depth that drew her in. She felt an inexplicable connection to it, as if it was calling out to her. But that night, as she was getting ready for bed, she noticed something strange. The room was dimly lit, and as she glanced into the mirror, she thought she saw a flicker of movement behind her. She turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. In the reflection, there was a shadowy figure standing behind her. It was just a fleeting glimpse, but it sent a chill down her spine. She tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, a trick of the light. Over the next few days, the figure appeared more frequently. Every time she looked into the mirror, she would see the shadowy figure lurking in the background. It seemed to be getting closer and more defined with each passing day. One night she woke up to find the figure standing at the foot of her bed. It was no longer just a shadow in the mirror, it was there, in her room. She could feel its presence, cold and menacing. She was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or scream. Desperate for help, Emma contacted a paranormal investigator. She explained everything that had been happening, hoping that they could provide some answers or a solution. The investigator listened intently and agreed to come over and inspect the mirror. They discovered that the mirror had once belonged to a woman who had been murdered. The investigator explained that sometimes spirits become attached to objects, especially if they had a strong emotional connection to them in life. The murdered woman's spirit was trapped in the mirror, unable to move on. Emma decided to get rid of the mirror, but even after it was gone, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The experience had left a lasting impression on her, and she couldn't help but wonder if the spirit had truly been freed, or if it was still lingering, watching her from the shadows. It was supposed to be a fun adventure. A group of friends decided to explore an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. As they made their way through the dark, decaying halls, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then they heard it, a faint whispering echoing down the halls. Suddenly, one of the friends screamed. They had seen a figure, a shadowy form darting down the hall. Desperate to leave, they made their way to the exit, but the doors wouldn't budge. They never spoke of what happened that night, but the memory of the abandoned asylum still haunts them. It was a dark, stormy night when David was driving home from work. Suddenly he saw a figure standing by the side of the road, drenched and shivering. Feeling sorry for them, he pulled over and offered a ride. The figure was a young woman, her clothes soaked and her face pale. When they reached her destination, she thanked him again and got out of the car. The next day he decided to visit the address she had given him. To his shock, he discovered it was an old abandoned house. David was haunted by the encounter, unable to forget the Phantom Hitchhiker and her sad, ghostly eyes. Lily had always loved dolls, so when she found an old porcelain doll at a flea market, she couldn't resist buying it. But soon, strange things began to happen. Lily would find the doll in different positions, its eyes seeming to follow her around the room. One night she woke up to find the doll sitting on her bed, its eyes glowing in the dark. She took the doll to a local psychic, who revealed a horrifying truth. The doll was cursed, inhabited by the spirit of a vengeful child. Lily decided to bury the doll, hoping to break the curse. Mark had always been a rational person, never believing in the supernatural, but that changed when he started seeing the Shadow Man. It began with fleeting glimpses out of the corner of his eye, a dark, shadowy figure standing in the corners of his home. The Shadow Man would appear in his bedroom at night, standing silently at the foot of his bed. Desperate for answers, Mark did some research and discovered that he was not alone. One night, Mark decided to confront the Shadow Man. He stayed awake, waiting for it to appear. Mark was left shaken, but the sightings stopped. The Smith family thought they had found their perfect home. But soon after moving in, strange things began to happen. It started with small disturbances, objects moving on their own, strange noises in the night. The family tried to ignore it, but the activity grew more intense. They contacted a paranormal investigator who confirmed their worst fears. A poltergeist was haunting their home. The Smiths were advised to cleanse their home and try to create a positive environment. The activity gradually decreased, but the family was left traumatized. Sarah and Emily had been best friends since college, so when they decided to move in together, it seemed like the perfect arrangement. They found a charming apartment in the heart of the city, filled with light and character. It was the kind of place where they could see themselves building countless memories, from late-night movie marathons to Sunday brunches on the balcony. The first few weeks were blissful, filled with laughter and the excitement of decorating their new home. But one night, Sarah came home to find Emily missing. The apartment was eerily quiet, and an unsettling feeling crept over her. She called out for Emily, but there was no answer. The silence was deafening, and a sense of dread began to build in the pit of her stomach. Her belongings were still there, but there was no sign of her. Emily's favorite book lay open on the coffee table, and her jacket was draped over the back of a chair. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air, leaving everything behind. Sarah searched the apartment, calling out her name, but there was no response. She checked every room, every closet, and even the small storage spaces, but Emily was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as she realized something was terribly wrong. As the days went by, Sarah began to notice strange things. The atmosphere in the apartment grew heavy, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and the air was thick with an unexplainable tension. Objects would move on their own, and she would hear faint whispers in the night. The whispers were unintelligible, but they filled her with a sense of unease. It was as if the apartment itself was alive, and it was trying to communicate with her. Desperate for answers, Sarah contacted a psychic, who revealed a chilling truth. The psychic, surrounded by candles and a crystal ball, told Sarah that Emily had been taken by a malevolent spirit. This spirit had trapped her in a parallel dimension, a place where time and space were distorted. Emily had been taken by a malevolent spirit trapped in a parallel dimension. The psychic explained that this dimension was a shadowy mirror of their own world, filled with lost souls and dark entities. Emily was now a prisoner in this eerie, foggy realm, unable to return to the world she knew. Sarah moved out of the apartment, but the memory of her vanishing roommate still haunts her. She often wonders if there was something she could have done to save Emily, and the guilt weighs heavily on her. The experience has left her with a deep fear of the unknown, and she can never forget the chilling events that unfolded in that apartment. A group of friends decided to go camping in the forest, seeking adventure and a break from their busy lives. But as night fell, the atmosphere changed. The forest seemed to come alive with eerie sounds, whispers, footsteps, and the rustling of leaves. One by one, they began to see shadowy figures moving among the trees. The friends huddled together, terrified and unsure of what to do. Suddenly one of the friends screamed. They had seen a ghostly figure standing at the edge of the clearing, its eyes filled with malice. The haunted forest left a lasting impression on them. The Johnson family thought their son Timmy was just going through a phase. He had always been a quiet, shy boy, but recently his behavior had become erratic. Concerned, the family took him to a doctor, but there was no medical explanation for his behavior. Desperate for answers, they contacted a priest, who suspected that Timmy was possessed by a malevolent spirit. The priest performed an exorcism, but the spirit was strong. After hours of intense struggle, the spirit was finally expelled. The Johnsons moved to a new home, hoping to leave the past behind. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these scary stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-tingling content. Sweet dreams. If you can sleep, until next time, stay safe and stay scared.